Hi and welcome to program 4 in this series of tutorials and programs which focus on MultiCharts PowerLanguage. If you're not part of our email list, then please go to chartplex.com, that's chartplex.com, and join the list, and I'll be happy to let you know when I create new tutorials or programs. Today's program is what I call a pivot limit program. It is actually a signal, and the way it works is as follows. We look for a pivot point such as this one here, and then we draw a line, and we look then for the price to go, in the case of a long trade, below that line. If it does, we issue a limit order next bar to buy at this level. Of course, that's a limit order, so we get in at that level or lower. And then we have two targets, and the user inputs, which I'll go through in a second, determine how many trades, or rather how many contracts or shares are sold at the first target and how many are sold at the second target. We also have a trailing stop, and it works similarly for a short trade. We have a pivot, then if we go above that level, we issue a short limit trade, and again we have two targets for the short trade. We also have the trailing stop. The other subtlety of this program is once the pivot is confirmed, we start counting bars, and in the case of a long trade, the price has to go below that line within the number of bars for it to be a valid trade. And similarly for a short trade, having confirmed the initial pivot, we need to go below that line within a certain, or rather above the pivot level within a certain number of bars, dependent on this user input for us to have a valid trade. The other thing to bear in mind is that actually what can happen is we could for example be in a long trade, and while we're in a long trade there might be a valid high pivot, and so we wouldn't get into the short trade while we're in the long trade. But if for some reason we got out of the long trade, for instance we hit a target, then so long as we were still within that count, then we would get into the short trade. Now I've made the targets and the trailing stop amounts quite small just so that you can see what's going on here. I found actually the program works better if it's given some space and those targets are somewhat larger and the trailing stop is somewhat larger, at least with the E-mini, which is what I've got it on here, 15-minute E-mini chart. So let's just have a look at the inputs to the program. So I'm going to click Format, Signal, and then I'm just going to double click on these values here, and we'll just go through each of them in turn. So left strength and right strength, these determine the strength of the initial pivot. Number of bars, this is the maximum amount that the count can get to for a signal still to be valid. As I mentioned, once the pivot is confirmed, we start counting, and we have to go above for a short trade or below for a long trade the pivot level within this number of bars for the signal to be valid. Contracts, the number of contracts that we're going to buy or sell. Trailing value. Oh, and incidentally, trailing value and target 1 and target 2, these are expressed as a multiple of the minimum move of the particular thing that we're analyzing. As I say, in this case, the E-mini, S&P E-mini on 15-minute bars. So trailing value is the amount that we trail by. Target 1 is 5 multiplied by the minimum move above the entry price or below the entry price for a short. And similarly, now target 2 is actually added on to target 1. So for example, if we were in a long trade, the first target would be the entry price plus 5, in this case target 1, 5 times the minimum move, and the second target would be the entry price plus 5 plus 2 equals 7 times the minimum move. Then first target contracts, that's the number of contracts we sell at the first target. Of course, the rest we would sell at the second target. And then show lines determines whether we show the trailing stop lines or not. So if I just change that to false and say OK and go back to the chart, you'll see that we can no longer see those trailing stop lines, and we can no longer see the line that shows us the pivot level. Anyway, as I say, this program, and one final thing actually quite important is that this program is hopefully the basis of something that you can use in your Power Language education, but also it's something that I've added some, just let's make this a little smaller, but what I've done is created within the program some filters. And the filters I've called long filter 123 123. I've set them as true in terms of the program as it is, and you can download this for a nominal fee, but you could also experiment with creating your own filters, and I gave you an example one here. For example, if we wanted to set a stochastic, rather than saying long filter equals true, we'd say long filter equals we could, for example, say that the O-slope K is going to be less than 25 for that to be true, and that is one of the factors involved in whether we get into a long trade or not. So you could create your own filters based on this, and I've set up here just three for long trades, 3 for short. Anyway, I hope you might find this program useful. As I say, it is available for a nominal fee to download, and again, if you're not on our email list, then please go to chartplex.com and I'll let you know when I create new tutorials or programs. Thank you.